the darkest corners of the galaxy, the elite paid fortunes to watch a helpless human get torn apart by a starving Dorix, the most feared apex predator alive. But when the arena gates opened, the human didn't scream. He spoke the monster's impossible language. And the beast answered. What started as entertainment for the powerful quickly turned into their worst nightmare. Tonight, the Watchers became the Watched. And the galaxy would never forget the massacre that followed. Before we dive deeper into the story, please subscribe. It costs you nothing but helps stellar HFY a lot. The Abyss Coliseum clung like a festering parasite to the rotten underbelly of Station Vera 9, its massive docking clamps groaning and creaking under the strain of a dozen encrypted luxury shuttles. Each vessel bore false transponders and heavy sensor baffles, necessary precautions for the galaxy's most powerful elites who preferred their depravities hidden in shadow. Red emergency lighting pulsed along the access corridors like the erratic heartbeat of a dying beast, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to writhe with malicious intent. Trade Master Zibsar slithered through the primary airlock, his sleek void silk robe whispering against the grated floor. 4 eye stalks extended fully, each one independently scanning the dim environment for threats while his mandibles clicked softly in calculated anticipation. The air was thick, oppressive, a rancid cocktail of recycled ozone, acrid fear sweat, cheap neural stims, and the faint metallic tang of old blood. Zibsar despised every molecule of it. He loathed the risk, the filth, the unpredictable nature of this place. Yet the potential rewards outweighed every instinct screaming at him to turn back. Blackmail was an art form, and tonight's illegal deathmatch promised the richest canvas he had ever encountered. A hooded attendant emerged from the gloom, its face obscured by a neural dampener mask. It scanned Zibsar's forged credentials with a flickering holopad. Trade Master Zibsar. VIP tier confirmed. Box 7. Your absolute discretion is guaranteed. Provided the usual exorbitant fee has been transferred. Zibsar's mandibles curved into a predatory smile. Discretion is the only reason any of us slither through these sewers. He extended a slender limb and pressed an encrypted credit chip into the attendant's gloved palm, enough to buy silence from a small planetary government. As the attendant stepped aside, Zibsar activated the microrecorder woven into his left ocular implant. The device hummed to life, capturing ultra-high-resolution visuals, audio, and even subtle biometric data. Every whispered conversation, every nervous glance, every salivating grin would be preserved in perfect, damning clarity. The service corridors narrowed into claustrophobic tunnels, the walls scarred by years of desperate claw marks from previous entertainers who had tried, and failed, to escape. Zibsar moved with practiced caution, his multiple hearts beating in a rapid, uneven rhythm. He passed other VIPs filing toward their private boxes, Galactic Council senators draped in flowing ceremonial robes, corporate warlords whose fortunes could bankrupt star systems, and even a retired admiral whose medal still gleamed under the blood-red lights. None acknowledged one another. To admit attendance at the Abyss Coliseum was to invite political ruin, economic collapse, or a quiet assassination. The collective silence was thicker than the stench. Zibsar settled into the plush confines of Box 7. The transparent energy shield hummed as it sealed with a soft click, isolating him from the main viewing gallery while granting an unobstructed view of the arena below. The pit yawned open like a gaping wound, nearly 100 meters across, its floor a nightmarish patchwork of rusted grating, blood-caked sand, and jagged metal obstacles designed to prolong suffering. In the surrounding holding pens, starving predators paced restlessly, their roars and howls vibrating through the reinforced structure and sending shudders up Zibsar's spine. Tonight's marquee event burned across the massive hollow billboard in dripping, crimson holographic letters, Human vs. Dorix. Zibsar leaned forward, his eye stalks quivering with focus. The human prisoner was led out first, a lean, battle-hardened male with a bare, scarred chest crisscrossed by prison tattoos and fresh manacle burns on his wrists. Sergeant Marcus Hale, according to the manifest. Captured during the brutal Rim incursion. No living family. No rescue beacon. No one coming. Just another disposable soul for the amusement of the powerful. Opposite the human, the Dorix waited in its reinforced pen. 8 feet of pure nightmare, corded obsidian scales, 6 powerful clawed limbs capable of shredding starship hulls, and jaws wide enough to crush reinforced plating. Its eyes burned with feral, starving red light. Denied food for 3 full cycles, the apex predator slammed its massive body repeatedly against the bars, the impact sending sparks flying and eliciting delighted gasps from the hidden observers. The crowd, hidden behind one-way shields and anonymity fields, erupted in a low, hungry murmur. In a nearby box, Senator Vera's writhing tentacles twisted in barely contained excitement, her bioluminescent skin flushing with anticipation. Zibsar's recorder captured her face in perfect detail. Perfect leverage. The announcer's voice boomed through hidden speakers, artificially deepened and dripping with theatrical menace. Esteemed gentle beings of the council, place your final wagers. One sentient will walk out of this pit alive. The other will provide tonight's unforgettable entertainment. Zibsar's eye stalks narrowed to slits. He cared nothing for the spectacle of death itself. The blood, the screams, the torn flesh, those were merely the price of admission. What mattered were the faces. The whispered bets. The undeniable proof that the galaxy's self-proclaimed moral guardians indulged in the darkest appetites imaginable. With this recording, he could ruin careers, secure impossible trade routes, and perhaps even bring down a high counselor or two. The arena gates hissed open with a pneumatic sigh that sounded far too much like a final breath. The human, Hale, stepped forward into the pit, barefoot and unarmed, his posture unnervingly calm. His eyes swept across the invisible crowd with cold, calculating precision. No fear. No desperation. The Dorix's pen exploded open. The beast charged forward in a blur of muscle and rage, sand erupting in violent plumes beneath its claws, its roar so primal and deafening that the energy shields vibrated violently. Zibsar expected the human to break. To run. To scream. To die quickly and messily, providing the entertainment these monsters had paid so dearly for. Instead, Sergeant Marcus Hale opened his mouth and spoke. Not in galactic standard. Not in any language the galaxy's translators had ever catalogued. He spoke fluent Dorix, impossible guttural clicks, subsonic rumbles, and layered tones that resonated at frequencies no known species should comprehend. The apex predator skidded to a violent halt mid-charge, its claws gouging deep furrows into the blood-soaked sand. The entire Abyss Coliseum fell into a stunned, breathless silence. Zibsar's recorder captured the exact heartbeat when every elite observer realized, with dawning horror, that something had gone catastrophically, irreversibly wrong. The Dorix slowly tilted its massive, armored head and answered in the same impossible tongue. The tension in the air thickened into something sharp enough to cut. The Dorix's answering rumble rolled through the arena like subterranean thunder, deep, layered, vibrating at frequencies that made the reinforced energy shields hum and the spectators' bones ache. It wasn't mere sound, it was primal communication, ancient and raw, carrying nuances no galactic translator had ever been programmed to decode. Sergeant Marcus Hale stood motionless in the blood-stained sand, his scarred chest rising and falling steadily, eyes locked on the 8-foot nightmare before him. He replied without hesitation, the guttural clicks and subsonic growls flowing from his throat as naturally as breathing. In Box 7, Trade Master Zibsar's 4 eye stalks quivered violently. His internal translator implant erupted in a frenzy of error codes, flashing red warnings across his vision, language unknown. Database null. Frequency outside safe parameters. What in the void is this? He hissed, mandibles clacking in disbelief. His micro-recorder whirred louder, desperately capturing every impossible syllable, every micro-expression on the human's face, every twitch of the Dorix's armored jaws. The once roaring crowd of Galactic Council elites fell into a stunned, suffocating silence. Nervous laughter rippled from a few boxes, quickly dying as confusion turned to unease. In a nearby VIP enclosure, Senator Vera's writhing tentacles froze mid-convulsion, her bioluminescent skin flickering erratically between excited violet and alarmed gray. She leaned forward, pressing a delicate manipulator against the transparent shield, eyes wide with dawning dread. Hale took one deliberate, unhurried step forward. The Dorix, Kragthar, mirrored the movement exactly, its 6-clawed limbs planting with surprising grace. No savage lunge. No spray of arterial blood. Instead, the apex predator lowered its massive, obsidian-scaled head until its jagged maw hovered mere inches from the human's face. Hot, metallic breath washed over Hale, yet he didn't flinch. They conversed in low, urgent tones, clicks blending into rumbles, layered harmonics conveying concepts far beyond simple commands. It looked almost intimate, like two prisoners sharing a secret forged in shared hell. Zibsar's multiple hearts hammered against his chitinous chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. The human was meant to break, to scream, to provide the visceral thrill these depraved elites had paid millions for. The Dorix was supposed to tear him apart in under 2 minutes, exactly as Senator Vera had wagered. His recorder zoomed in involuntarily, freezing the impossible tableau, the galaxy's most feared predator. Nodding in apparent agreement. Security alarms suddenly shrieked to life, a piercing wail that shattered the tension. Red strobes pulsed across the Colosseum. Guards in heavy exo-armor surged onto the overhead catwalks, rifles snapping up with mechanical precision. Containment breach protocol. One barked into his comm. All units converge on the arena floor. The announcer's voice crackled over the PA, strained and artificial. Esteemed guests, this is a minor technical difficulty. Please remain seated and enjoy complimentary neural comments. The match will resume momentarily. It was already too late. Hale turned sharply toward the nearest ventilation grate embedded high in the arena wall, a rusted, heavy panel reinforced with durasteel mesh. Without a word, Kragthar exploded into motion. One devastating swipe of its forward claws shredded the metal like wet tissue, sparks and debris exploding outward in a violent shower. The grate clanged to the sand below, revealing the dark, narrow maw of the station's ventilation system. Hale leapt with fluid precision onto the Dorix's broad, scaled back, gripping ridges of armor as handholds. The beast surged upward in a single powerful bound, muscles rippling beneath obsidian plates. In less than 3 heartbeats, both vanished into the ductwork, swallowed by shadows. Chaos erupted like a supernova. Elites surged from their seats, slamming against sealed box shields in panic. Luxury robes tangled as powerful beings shoved one another toward emergency exits. Senator Vera's voice cut through the din, shrill and commanding, "Lock the entire station down. No shuttles leave. I want every corridor sealed, now." Zibsar remained frozen for a split second, his recorder still greedily archiving every terrified face, every frantic comm call, every whispered curse. This footage was worth more than he had ever dreamed. If he survived to sell it. He bolted from Box 7 into the narrow service corridor, void silk robe flapping wildly. The air grew thicker, charged with a metallic scent of fear and impending violence. Distant roars echoed from the ventilation shafts, Kragthar's, but transformed. No longer the mindless bellow of a starved beast. This was triumphant. Coordinated. Hunting. Over the facility-wide PA system, a new voice sliced through the alarms, calm, steady, amplified and instantly translated into flawless galactic standard by the station's emergency broadcast array. "Listen closely, you spineless cowards who paid fortunes to watch us die." Hale's voice carried no rage, only ice-cold certainty. "We were never your entertainment. You were always ours." A small, precise explosion rocked the lower levels, ventilation charges, perhaps, or sabotaged power nodes. Lights flickered violently. Somewhere deep below, another predator pen hissed open with a pneumatic sigh. Fresh roars joined the symphony of terror. Zibsar ran harder, claws scraping against the grated floor, lungs burning in his segmented chest. He ducked into a dimly lit maintenance alcove, pressing his back against cold piping as guards thundered past. His recorder continued transmitting, capturing his own ragged breathing and the wild dilation of his eye stalks in a polished metal panel. He had come seeking leverage over the powerful. Now the hunted had become the hunters. And the corridors were already darkening, filled with the echoes of vengeance long denied. Gunfire erupted somewhere above, desperate, scattered bursts. A scream tore through the vents, cut brutally short. Zibsar's mandibles clicked rapidly in rising panic. The massacre had begun. The ventilation ducts had become a shadowed highway of death. Sergeant Marcus Hale and Kragthar moved with terrifying synchronization, dropping silently through a ruptured grate into the dimly lit sublevels of the Abyss Coliseum. Their footsteps, human boots and clawed pads, barely whispered against the cold grating. Years of shared captivity, whispered conversations in an impossible tongue, and mutual hatred for their captors had forged them into something far deadlier than any predator-prey pairing the galaxy had ever witnessed. Trade Master Zibsar crouched in the flickering shadows of a utility junction, his torn void silk robe clinging to his chitinous frame. His micro-recorder remained live, desperately slicing into the station's cracked security feeds. The footage played across his ocular implant in brutal clarity, the human and the Dorix raiding an armory locker. Kragthar's massive claws tore through reinforced plating as if it were paper. Hale emerged armed with a plasma rifle slung across his back and a combat knife strapped to his thigh. They exchanged a few low clicks in their private language, then switched seamlessly to Galactic Standard, knowing every camera was now their stage. "We know every single one of you," Hale announced, staring directly into a security lens, his voice calm yet laced with lethal promise. "Names. Titles. Secret account numbers. The exact amounts you paid to watch a human get torn apart. Tonight, we collect with interest." Zibsar's multiple hearts stuttered. How? The human had been isolated in solitary confinement for months. No outside contact. No data access. Yet here he was, listing details that should have been buried in encrypted ledgers. The Trademaster's eye stalks widened in horror as the realization sank in. Hale and Kragthar had been planning this for far longer than anyone suspected. Kragthar smashed a nearby security node with one casual swipe. Sparks erupted. Alarms howled anew, red emergency lighting pulsing like arterial blood. A squad of 12 exo-armored guards converged from multiple corridors, moving in tight, professional formation, rifles raised and tactical lights cutting through the gloom. The security feed captured the massacre in merciless detail. Kragthar charged first. The apex predator became a blur of obsidian scales and ripping claws. Exo-armor that could withstand vacuum and plasma fire crumpled like foil under his assault. One guard was lifted bodily and slammed into the bulkhead with bone-shattering force. Another had his helmet torn off before a clawed limb punched straight through his chest plate. Hale moved like liquid death in the beast's shadow. His plasma rifle barked with surgical precision, 3 rapid shots dropping 2 guards before they could even acquire targets. He flowed between strikes, knife flashing in a deadly arc that severed an armored limb at the joint. No wasted movement. No hesitation. Just cold, calculated efficiency born from whatever hell had forged him. Blood, both red and ichorous, painted the corridor walls in grotesque patterns. Screams echoed, quickly silenced. Zibsar fled deeper into the maze of service tunnels, his segmented legs pumping desperately. Lungs burned. One eye stalk throbbed from a glancing blow he didn't even remember receiving. The corridors had become a nightmarish labyrinth of flickering lights, distant roars, and the wet sounds of slaughter. He stumbled past a once luxurious lounge where elites had sipped Nebula wine and placed casual bets only minutes earlier. Now it was a slaughterhouse. Senator Vera's severed tentacle lay twitching on the blood-slick floor, still glowing faintly with residual bioluminescence. Her headless body slumped against an overturned table nearby. Zibsar's mandibles clicked in rising panic. He rounded a sharp corner and nearly collided with 3 surviving guards. Their rifles snapped up instantly. "I'm not with them!" Zibsar shrieked, raising his limbs in surrender. "I'm just a traitor, I have nothing to do with." A searing burst of plasma fire cut one guard in half at the waist, the superheated beam cauterizing the wound even as the body fell. Hale stepped out of the swirling smoke, rifle still smoking at the barrel. Kragthar loomed directly behind him, jaws dripping with fresh gore, red eyes glowing with primal satisfaction. Zibsar scrambled backward on all limbs, claws scraping frantically against the deck. "Please, whatever you want, I can get it for you. Credits, ships, influence, safe passage anywhere in council space." Hale's eyes were bottomless voids. No rage burned there. No sadistic pleasure. Only the cold, expressionless calculation of a man who had already passed judgment. "You filmed us," he said quietly, voice carrying perfectly in the sudden stillness. "Every face in the boxes. Every bet placed on how long I would scream. You were planning to sell our deaths for profit." Zibsar's ocular implant confirmed it with a soft whir. The archive was still uploading, still recording every second of this nightmare. Hale's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth whatsoever. Good. Keep recording. The galaxy needs to see exactly what happens when the Watch decide to become the Watchers. Kragthar growled low in his throat, a sound that vibrated through Zibsar's bones. Hale translated without breaking eye contact. He says your kind kept him caged for 3 years. Starved him. Forced him to kill his own kind for your amusement. Today the cages open for everyone who profited from our suffering. Zibsar backed up until his spine slammed against a cold bulkhead. There was nowhere left to run. The Council will hunt you both down. They'll glass this entire station from orbit. They already tried, Hale replied, voice eerily calm. We have their override codes now. This facility wasn't truly illegal. It was quietly sanctioned at the highest levels by the same beings who sat safely in their boxes tonight. The conspiracy runs far deeper than you can imagine. Zibsar's remaining eye stalks widened in genuine shock. His recorder captured the explosive revelation in real time, proof that would detonate across Council space like a singularity bomb. Fresh gunfire erupted from the far end of the corridor. The last surviving guards had regrouped for a desperate final stand. Kragthar roared, a sound that shook the walls, and charged forward like living vengeance. Hale moved seamlessly to cover the beast's flank, rifle cracking with deadly accuracy. Zibsar saw his fleeting chance. He sprinted for the nearest emergency stairwell leading toward the docking ring, breath coming in ragged gasps, robe torn and trailing behind him like a broken banner. Behind him, the guards died screaming in under 10 seconds. As Zibsar climbed the stairs on trembling limbs, Hale's voice echoed up the shaft, calm, measured, and utterly final. We're not finished with you yet, Trademaster Zibsar. The stairwell lights flickered ominously. The massacre was far from over. Darkness swallowed the Abyss Coliseum like a living thing. Primary power systems failed in cascading waves, plunging entire decks into absolute black. Only the emergency red strips remained, painting every corridor, every bulkhead, every blood-slick floor in the color of fresh slaughter. The station itself seemed to groan in protest, metal creaking under the strain of sabotage and unchecked violence. Trademaster Zibsar crawled through a narrow service tunnel, his once pristine void silk robe now torn and soaked with his own pale ichor. One eye stalk was swollen completely shut from a glancing plasma burn, the pain a constant, throbbing fire. His remaining 3 eye stalks darted wildly, night vision filters straining to pierce the gloom. The microrecorder embedded in his ocular implant continued its merciless broadcast, now hacked and looped into the station's emergency public address system. Every surviving elite was watching their own doom play out in real time. Screams ricocheted through the corridors like living weapons. A corporate warlord's final, desperate plea for mercy was cut brutally short by a deep, guttural Dorix roar that vibrated through the deck plating. Zibsar pressed his back against a cold, dripping pipe, hearts hammering so hard he feared they might burst. The air was thick with the stench of charred flesh, spilled blood, and raw terror. He forced himself to move again, claws scraping frantically against the grated floor. The corridors had become a nightmarish maze of flickering red light and lengthening shadows. He passed the remains of what had once been the VIP promenade. Bodies lay scattered like broken dolls, guards in shattered exo-armor, station staff who had tried to hide, and 2 high-ranking counselors who had barricaded themselves inside a luxury observation suite. Their expensive robes were shredded, their limbs torn at unnatural angles. The walls were decorated with gruesome splatters that told the story of a very short, very violent last stand. Zibsar's mandibles clicked rapidly in rising panic. He rounded another corner into the main promenade, an open space that had once hosted elegant gatherings for the galaxy's elite. Now it was a charnel house. The emergency lighting cast everything in hellish crimson. A shadow detached itself silently from the ceiling above. Kragthar dropped 10 meters away, landing with barely a sound despite his massive bulk. The apex predator did not charge immediately. He simply stood there, 6 clawed limbs planted, red eyes glowing with patient, primal hunger. Waiting. From the darkness behind Zibsar, measured footsteps approached. Sergeant Marcus Hale emerged into the red light, plasma rifle lowered but ready at his side. Blood, mostly alien, splattered across his bare chest and prison tattoos. His eyes reflected the emergency strips like polished black glass, cold and unreadable. Zibsar froze, breath caught in his throat. "Nowhere left to run, Trade Master," Hale said quietly. His voice was conversational, almost gentle, yet every syllable carried the weight of final judgment. Zibsar dropped to his knees on the blood-slicked deck, mandibles chattering. "Please. I beg you. I never wanted any of this. I was only here for the credits, for the opportunities, credits earned by watching us bleed," Hale interrupted, taking one slow step closer. "You recorded Senator Vera betting 10 million credits that the Dorics would take my head in under 2 minutes. You have the file. You plan to sell every scream, every drop of blood." Zibsar's ocular implant confirmed it with a soft, damning whir. The archive was still live, still broadcasting every word, every terrified twitch of his own eye stalks across the station. Kragthar growled low and deep, the sound rolling through Zibsar's bones like an earthquake. Hale translated without ever breaking eye contact. "He says your kind kept him in a cage for 3 years. Starved him. Made him kill his own kind for sport while you watched from safe boxes. Today the cage opens for everyone who profited." Zibsar backed away on all limbs until his spine slammed hard against a reinforced bulkhead. There was nowhere left to go. "The Galactic Council will hunt you both," he gasped. "They'll send fleets. They'll glass this entire station from orbit. They already tried," Hale replied calmly. "We intercepted their override codes. This facility wasn't some rogue operation. It was quietly sanctioned at the highest levels. The same senators and warlords who sat safely behind their shields tonight funded it all. The conspiracy runs deeper than you know." Zibsar's remaining eye stalks widened in genuine shock. His recorder captured the explosive revelation perfectly, proof that would detonate across council space and shatter decades of carefully maintained political facades. Fresh gunfire suddenly erupted from the far end of the promenade. A handful of surviving guards had regrouped for one last, desperate stand, their tactical lights cutting bright beams through the crimson darkness. Kragthar threw his head back and roared, a sound so primal and powerful it shook dust from the ceiling. The beast charged forward like living vengeance incarnate. Hale moved like a ghost beside him, rifle cracking with deadly, precise shots that dropped 2 guards before they could even aim properly. Zibsar saw his fleeting chance. Heart pounding, he sprinted desperately for the nearest emergency stairwell that led up toward the docking ring. His breath came in ragged, painful gasps. The torn robe trailed behind him like a tattered flag of surrender. Behind him, the guards died screaming in under 10 seconds, their final cries swallowed by the roar of Kragthar and the sharp report of Hale's rifle. Zibsar reached the stairwell and began climbing the metal steps on trembling limbs, claws slipping on blood-slick surfaces. The emergency lighting flickered ominously overhead. Every shadow seemed to hide death. A single plasma shot ricocheted off the railing just beside his head, sending molten metal sparks flying past his face. Hale's voice echoed up the dark shaft, calm, measured, and utterly final. "We're not finished with you yet, Trademaster Zibsar." The stairwell lights continued to flicker as Zibsar climbed higher, each step taking him closer to his shuttle. And closer to the end of the hunt. The corridors of the damned had one final victim in mind, and the hunters were patient. The massacre was reaching its crescendo. The docking ring was pure pandemonium. Shuttles that had once sat in neat formation now burned on their pads, sabotage precise and merciless, fuel lines severed, navigation cores overloaded, escape impossible for anyone who had come to watch death for sport. Thick black smoke curled toward the overhead vents, mixing with the acrid stench of scorched metal and spilled coolant. Emergency klaxons wailed in a continuous, deafening scream. Trade Master Zibsar sprinted across the open deck, claws clicking frantically against the cold metal plating. His torn void silk robe flapped behind him like a broken banner, soaked with ichor from the gash along his side. One eye stalk remained swollen shut, the other 3 darted wildly, searching for any path to survival. His own sleek trader vessel sat untouched at the far end of the ring, 20 meters away, ramp already lowered as if mocking him. Safety. Escape. A chance to broadcast everything and disappear into the rim. He was 10 meters from the ramp when every light in the hangar died completely. Absolute darkness swallowed the docking ring. Only the faint glow of burning shuttles and dying emergency strips provided any illumination. Zibsar's ocular implant switched desperately to night vision, casting the world in ghostly green hues. His hearts thundered as he pushed forward, lungs burning, mandibles clicking in raw terror. He reached the ramp and slammed his trembling palm against the access panel. The hatch hissed open with a pneumatic sigh. Relief flooded him for one precious second. He could make it. He could jump to warp, transmit the full archive to every black market channel in council space, sell the footage for enough credits to buy a new identity and vanish forever. A massive silhouette suddenly blocked the starfield visible through the open hangar doors. Kragthar stood anchored to the hull of a neighboring wrecked shuttle, 6 clawed limbs gripping the metal with effortless strength. The Dorix's obsidian scales gleamed faintly in the firelight, red eyes burning like twin coals. He did not move. He simply waited, a living wall between Zibsar and the void. Zibsar froze mid-step, one limb still raised toward the open hatch. From the deep shadows inside the hangar bay, another figure emerged. Sergeant Marcus Hale stepped into the flickering light, rifle long abandoned. Only the combat knife remained in his right hand, blade still wet with alien blood. Fresh splatters of ichor and crimson painted his scarred chest and prison tattoos. His eyes, cold, black, and utterly expressionless, reflected the dying flames like polished obsidian. No rage. No triumph. Just the quiet finality of a Mun who had already decided the fate of everyone who had paid to watch him die. Zibsar collapsed to his knees on the ramp, mandibles chattering so violently they clicked against each other. "Mercy," he begged, voice cracking into a high, desperate whine. "I beg you, have mercy. I have a clutch waiting on TX4. Hatchlings. Innocent young. I was only doing business. I never touched you myself." "I never, business," Hale repeated the word slowly, tasting it like poison on his tongue. He took one deliberate step closer, knife hanging loosely at his side, though the tension in his fingers promised it could rise in a heartbeat. "You watched me starve for weeks in that cell. You watched Kragthar's family butchered in front of him while elites placed bets on how long he would last. You recorded every scream, every drop of blood, every laugh from the boxes. And you call it business." Zibsar's ocular implant word, still desperately recording and broadcasting live. The entire galaxy, those who had not yet fled or died, was watching this final confrontation in real time. "I can delete it all." Zibsar whimpered, raising his limbs in surrender. "I can say it was fabricated. I'll testify against the council. I'll give you every contact, every bribe, every name you want. Just let me live. Please." Hale's expression never changed. No flicker of hatred. No spark of satisfaction. Only the cold, emotionless calculation of someone who had crossed a line from which there was no return. Kragthar dropped silently from the neighboring hull, landing with a heavy boom that shook the entire deck. The beast's hot, metallic breath washed over Zibsar, carrying the scent of blood and raw power. Hale spoke softly in the impossible Dorix tongue. Kragthar answered with a single, low rumble. Then Hale looked back at the cowering trademaster. "He says your death will not balance the scales of what was done to us. But it is a beginning." Zibsar lunged desperately for the open hatch, claws scrabbling against the ramp. The combat knife flashed once, fast, precise, merciless. White-hot pain exploded across Zibsar's side as the blade sank deep, twisting with surgical cruelty. Ichor sprayed across the metal. He collapsed halfway up the ramp, limbs twitching, vision blurring at the edges. His recorder implant captured everything in merciless detail, the cold finality in Hale's eyes, the patient hunger in Kragthar's glowing gaze, the spreading pool of pale ichor beneath his own broken body. Hale crouched beside him, knife now clean, voice low and almost gentle. No more hiding behind shields. No more watching from safe boxes while others bleed for your entertainment. The watched have spoken. Zibsar tried to speak, but only a wet, gurgling click escaped. His remaining eye stalks fixed on Hale's face, inches away. The hangar's emergency holoscreen flickered to life one final time, projecting Zibsar's own archive across the blood-stained walls, every elite face, every bet, every sanctioned order from the Galactic Council. The Trademaster's last conscious thought was the horrifying realization that his precious recording had become the instrument of his own execution. And the beginning of something far larger. Kragthar stepped forward. One massive claw pinned what remained of Zibsar's robe to the deck. The final scream tore across the open broadcast channel, raw and unending, echoing through every corner of council space. Then silence fell. Hale rose slowly, eyes still cold, and looked once at the dead traitor before turning to Kragthar. They shared a single, wordless nod, human and monster, allies forged in the deepest pits of hell. The station's core began its final countdown. The hunters had claimed their last prize. The reckoning was complete. Zibsar lay sprawled across the blood-slick ramp of his own shuttle, vision fracturing into darkening tunnels. Ichor pooled beneath him, warm and sticky, his remaining eye stalks twitching feebly as the life drained from his body. Sergeant Marcus Hale crouched beside the dying Trademaster, the combat knife now clean and resting lightly against his thigh. Kragthar stood guard a few paces away, massive frame silhouetted against the flickering hangar fires, red eyes glowing with quiet, primal satisfaction. You'll never escape this, Zibsar gasped, voice a wet, broken rattle. Each word cost him precious strength. The Council has entire fleets. They'll hunt you across the galaxy. Glass every world you touch. Hale reached down and pressed a small data crystal into Zibsar's trembling claw. The Trademaster's fingers closed around it instinctively, weak and spasming. This is your archive, Hale said quietly, voice steady and devoid of triumph. Unedited. Every face from the boxes. Every name. Every credit transfer that proves the Galactic Council not only knew about this place but funded and protected it. We're broadcasting it system-wide right now. As if on cue, the hangar's emergency holoscreen flickered back to life one final time. Zibsar's own high-resolution recordings exploded across every channel the station could still reach, raw, unfiltered, merciless. Senator Vera laughing as predators fed on captives. Corporate warlords casually placing million-credit bets on how long a human would scream. Quiet, coded orders from sealed council chambers authorizing entertainment facilities across the rim. Faces of the powerful, twisted in bloodlust, now exposed to the entire galaxy. Zibsar's ocular implant finally powered down with a soft, dying whine. The last image it captured was Hale's face mere inches away, cold, expressionless, yet carrying the weight of unbreakable resolve. No more running, Hale whispered. No more watching safely from your boxes while others bleed for your amusement. The watched have spoken. Kragthar stepped forward. One massive clawed limb pinned the remnants of Zibsar's robe to the deck plating. The Trademaster's final scream tore across the open broadcast channel, raw, guttural, and unending, echoing through every corner of council space before it was brutally cut short. Then silence. Hale rose slowly to his feet. He looked down once at the lifeless body of the Trademaster, then turned to Kragthar. They shared a single, wordless nod, human and Dorix, two survivors bound by impossible language and shared hell. No celebration. Only the quiet acknowledgement that the first battle was over, but the war had only just begun. The station's core began to overload. Small, precisely placed charges they had planted during their rampage ticked down in perfect synchronization. Red warning lights pulsed faster across the docking ring as structural integrity alarms wailed. Hale and Kragthar walked up the ramp of Zibsar's sleek trader vessel without haste. The hatch sealed behind them with a solid, final hiss. Inside the cockpit, Hale dropped into the pilot's chair, fingers moving with practiced efficiency over controls he had never touched before. Kragthar curled his massive bulk into the reinforced cargo bay, scales scraping softly against the deck, a loyal shadow ready for whatever came next. As the shuttle lifted off the pad, the Abyss Coliseum tore itself apart in a silent, cataclysmic fireball against the cold backdrop of space. Debris glittered like dying embers, spinning outward into the void, twisted metal, shattered luxury boxes, and the broken bodies of those who had come to watch a human die. Hale stared out the viewport at the expanding cloud of wreckage, eyes still cold, but the faintest trace of a weary smile touched his lips for the first time in years. They paid to watch a human die, he murmured, voice low. Kragthar rumbled softly in agreement from the cargo bay, the sound vibrating through the deck. They got a massacre instead. The shuttle's engines flared. It accelerated away from the dying station, jumping to warp in a flash of distorted starlight. Behind them, galactic news feeds were already exploding across every inhabited system. Council conspiracy exposed, massacre at illegal arena human and Dorix alliance confirmed, broadcast archives rock Galactic Council senators and warlords implicated Ion deathmatch ring. Hale leaned back in a pilot seat, staring into the swirling colors of warp space. The data crystal and the full archive were now propagating faster than any fleet could contain, replicated, mirrored, and seeded across thousands of independent networks. The Galactic Council's carefully maintained facade of civilization had been shattered in a single night. Somewhere in the distant rim colonies, other captive humans and abused predators listened to the broadcast in stunned silence. Whispers began in dark cells. Impossible languages were spoken in hidden corners. Alliances long thought impossible began to form. Hale glanced over his shoulder toward Kragthar. "This isn't the end," he said softly. "It's just the first spark." The Dorix answered in their shared tongue, a low, resonant growl that carried both agreement and promise. The shuttle streaked deeper into uncharted space, carrying 2 survivors and a trail of digital fire that would burn the old order to ash. The galaxy would never be the same. And in the darkness between stars, the hunted began to hunt back. They had come for spectacle. They had received vengeance instead. The reckoning had only just begun. Subscribe.